Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Let's get into this. So let's start off with this interview by Pam Bondi laying out what happened exactly at this nightclub in Colorado Springs. Roll the tape.
America is safer tonight thanks to Donald Trump. DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshals, ATF, ICE, everyone went in together. DEA led this investigation, went in, got 115 illegal immigrants, aliens in our country, arrested them, 2 with warrants, 12 guns seized. You would go in, security would give you a menu of drugs. Cocaine, there's something new called pink cocaine, meth, you could go in a bathroom stall, get that. There was prostitution.
And you might ask yourself, what's an illegal nightclub? Well, if you grew up in the military at Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, Fort Jackson, Fort Stewart, any other bases in the military, you know a little bit about underground clubs. I've just never been one of those guys. And I'm not surprised to hear that a dozen active duty personnel were rolled up in this. All my buddies in training were doing some kind of part-time work at a local bar or local club because these places needed security. And who's better to provide security than a 21-year-old 11 Bravo? I don't know. Some of the active duty service members were just there, and some of them were armed security for the establishment. They're probably going to get in trouble, but it's better than being deported. I want you guys to see the raw footage of this operation as it goes down, as they're making a mechanical breach into the front glass window, which allegedly has 200 members in it at the time. Let's roll the clip. 115-ish illegal that are currently being processed and likely to be deported, a dozen guns, a whole bunch of drugs, a whole bunch of prostitutes, and a whole bunch more issues to come. One of the guys there is apparently a member of the Sinaloa Cartel. I reported about this last week. In the backyard of this area in Florence, Colorado, at the Supermax prison, is old El Chapo, the former leader of the Sinaloa Cartel. So I know this is going to be spun like many of the stories that have been coming out recently to include the cases of these U.S. children being illegally deported. Well, that's part of the truth, but not the whole truth. Let's just roll a little news story on the children being deported.
That's a misleading headline. Okay, 3 U.S. citizens, ages 4, 7, and 2, were not deported. Their mothers, who are legally in this country, were deported. The children went with their mothers. If those children are U.S. citizens, they can come back into the United States if there's their father or someone here who wants to assume them. But ultimately, who was deported was their mothers who were here illegally. The children just went with their mothers. But it wasn't like, you guys make it sound like ICE agents kicked down the door and grabbed the 2-year-old and threw him on an airplane. That's misleading. Yeah. That's just not true.
ICE is not going into locations, taking children that are American citizens and throwing them on planes. If you're the mother or father, the parent or guardian of an American citizen that's a child, when you're rolled up because you're here illegally and you're being deported, just like you should be, you're given the option. Do you want to take your child with you? Why? It doesn't matter what the child's nationality is. It's your child. So you have an option. As in one of the cases, the woman from Honduras who was here illegally was given the option, and that's her due process. Do you want to take your child? Yes. She gets to take her child with her. So we have this case with this Judge Dugan. Let's just roll the clip on this real quick.
The judge learns that ICE was outside to get the guy because he had been deported in 2013, came back in our country, commits these crimes, charged with committing these crimes, victims in court. Judge finds out. She goes out in the hallway, screams at the immigration officers. She's furious, visibly shaken, upset, sends them off to talk to the chief judge. She comes back in the courtroom. You're not going to believe this. Takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes them out a private exit and tells them to leave.
She was frustrated because ICE agents were there to take away the illegal alien who was here illegally, but was also involved in an alleged crime. And so she took it amongst herself to let him out the back door to save him, like this is some Underground Railroad cause. So she's charged with obstruction of justice during federal proceedings, and concealment of a person during discovery. Those are big charges. That's 6 years in federal prison that she's willing to risk. In this case out of New Mexico, you have a judge and his spouse that are charged now because they were holding and hiding a member of TDA, Tren de Aragua. Guys, Tren de Aragua is a foreign terrorist organization. This is a very unique thing that's happening right now in this country because they were designated as organized criminals, but now they're foreign terrorists. And the difference is the allocation, like I told you guys before, of resources and assets that includes funds, that includes aircraft, that includes capabilities like signal intelligence that are going to be tracking these guys down. What happens when they're going through the lines of these networks and they find a whole bunch of American citizens who are facilitating these guys' protection, to include judges that are facilitating their escape out the back door. Now, this is an issue on the Hill that I don't think the left wants to die on. But seemingly after this Garcia dude and them traveling back and forth to El Salvador, this might be the case in these couple of examples to include these judges and this raid that took place. Now, how's it going to be spun? Or they're going to say it's a Gestapo. It's a rogue, radical government that's enacting its tyranny against its sovereign citizens. And if you're just going out to have a good old time at a legal party, that you might be the victim of this fascism as well. There were 170 different calls made to that nightclub where the DEA was doing an active investigation because apparently when you walked in the door, you got a menu. And this menu had things like meth. You can get that and a prostitute as you walk through the door. Now, what I was surprised to hear this weekend is Tom Homan talk about what he thought were the real estimates of numbers of illegals that entered in this country. On the lighter side, we've seen anything from 8 to 10 million. He thinks it's 20 million. He thinks it's 20 million based on the number of illegals that he knows about and the guesstimates of gotaways. Now, they could track the guesstimate of gotaways via reports from Border Patrol who's seen these guys get away, the cameras, the drones, etc., and they could formulate the number. 20 million is the number. So last week I did a piece on this whole ammunition thing. But my assumption on this was multiple courses of action. But a little birdie told me that there could be another reason why this ammunition is being stockpiled. And now I have two justifications why this ammo is stockpiled. One of the potential courses of action is to supply the ammunition for the cartel in Mexico. So they're consolidating the ammunition because it's easy to buy, apparently. You can buy 200,000 rounds in a weekend in Utah. It's easy to buy the ammunition in America and then transport it and then get it to a bed down location to distribute it, potentially export it from the US back into Mexico for the cartels. Or they were consolidating the ammunition because they're getting ready to do an attack. Now, what I've changed my mind on is the weapon system. This is me as a gunner on a 50 cal. Here's another picture of me on another gun. And so I'm used to gunning. And one of the trips that I forgot about was early on in the global war on terror in Iraq when we had started using miniguns, the M134. I don't remember the nomenclature. Anyways, it's the minigun. The minigun shoots 50. Actually, let me just show you what a minigun is. Let's roll the tape. All right, so that video is provided by Dylan Arrow. It's an old school video. It's awesome. The video is of the capability from the ground. Now, you're probably most familiar with a minigun that's used by both the Navy and then the Army in aviation. Like if you've ever seen an M860 Black Hawk helicopter, for example, during Black Hawk Down, that's the main gun that provides the support by fire for the helicopter when the helicopter's in harm's way. It shoots 50 rounds a second. It shoots 4,000 to 6,000 rounds a minute, depending on the setup or how you intend to run the gun. I was fortunate that one of my senior 18 Bravos, my weapons guys, Eli, who I worked with in 3rd Group, when we were in the Commanders and Extremist Force together, he was buddies with Chris Dillon from Dillon Arrow. And so we had a minigun on the front truck of our convoy when we went anywhere in Iraq to conduct ground assault operations. So I've led the convoy sitting on the minigun, not like physically on top of it, but physically sitting with the minigun in my hand. And I've also had troops in contact, been in gunfights with the minigun. And it's technically not a fair gunfight with a minigun. In fact, the 2 engagements that I was in, I would say that it wasn't very fair for the bad guy at all. There wasn't much left of anything. So why would it be utilized by the cartel? Well, it's because it's the most highly casualty producing weapon system of machine guns on the battlefield. The question would also be, well, does the cartel have a minigun? Well, here's a member of the cartel with a minigun. They do have them. And also, here's a video of the Mexican military using the minigun against alleged cartel members. So here's my point. If the Mexican military has the minigun, the cartel for sure has the minigun. Now, why would that be of a huge concern? Have you ever seen a terrorist attack on our homeland with a minigun? The answer is no. It's never happened. Can you imagine a rate of fire of 50 rounds a second and the cartel using the minigun in a domestic attack? Can you imagine that? I will imagine it. And I always say it's more likely now than it's ever been in human history. Now, the question is why, which I will get more deeply into the underground on my underground episode on Patreon. I want to say a big shout out to my buddy Alex of Firecracker Farms, who's the sponsor of this episode. It is the miniguns of Salt and Fusion and has my favorite kinds of salt. This is Snake Eater salt, which is my favorite kind of hot and spicy that I use on everything, including coffee, which is kind of weird, but I do it on coffee as well. You guys could use the link and the coupon code right here down below to save 15% on checkout. I appreciate you guys for supporting the channel. So one of the reasons, before I let you go, I think this is a major issue is because the underground, for example, this nightclub in Colorado is not the underground. They're operating in plain sight, and they do so because there's no fear. So what happens when you know you're being targeted, you're being raided, and then the overt nature of you just kind of operating in plain sight because you've gotten away with it for the last 4 years is no longer valid? You can't. You're going to go underground. And so we see 2 instances where 198,000 rounds total of 7.62 was rolled up in 2 separate geographical events in Wyoming and Colorado that were probably part of the same operation. My reasoning is because of the lack of capability, of overall just personnel, these bad guys who are overt are going to actually go underground, and it's going to be harder to track. And we know what happens when you have the ideology, the motivation, and the capability to conduct an attack. I think the heat is going to be turned up. Let me know what you think in the comments down below and how you think this is going to evolve. I think you're going to see covert action across the border in the next few weeks. And that Iran accident that just took place over the weekend, yeah, I don't think that was an accident. CIA. All right, guys, till next time. Peace.